Today you're going to be blessed by some stories of overcomers that we have here on the stage, and we've been in this series where we've been basing everything that we've been doing on Joel's book, and we are in the chapter that's titled "I'm Still Standing," and I know that you're going to be so encouraged today. And I just want to start out from Matthew chapter 7. But Jesus is telling this story, and he's saying that if you use my word as a guide for your life, and you look to it for your hope, and you look to it for your strength and the decisions that you make, those people will be like someone that builds their house upon the rock. And then there are other people that do not honor God in his word. They don't follow that, or they don't believe in it. And he says they will be like foolish people that build their house upon the sand. Now, the important part of this story is, he says, for both houses, for somebody that builds their house upon the rock, it's like, I'm going to follow God's word, and I'm going to get guidance and strength and hope from him. And then there's somebody else that has a house that says, well, you know, I'm not a believer, I'm not a Christian, I don't follow that, I'm going to build my house upon the sand. Here's what he says: both houses face storms, but he tells us that there's one house that stands. For the house that is built on the rock, when the storms come. Because see, there's storms for us. The Bible says it rains on the just and the unjust. But for the just, those that are following the word of God, when the storms come, their house will stand. But for those who do not honor God, do not believe in the Lord and follow his direction from his word, he said that house ends up getting washed away. So the important part is to know that whether we're believers or not, we all face storms. Last night, there was a storm that blew through. My goodness, it was blowing the screens off the house and shingles and everything. I was like, where did that storm come from? Woke me right up. But this morning, my house was still standing. I wasn't worried about that. And you know, there is a faith and a confidence that God can give us in our own journey, in our own personal lives, that we know there'll be some dark times that we'll face. But you know what? We can come out standing on the other side. We can not only be standing, but we can be stronger in our faith and through our experience. And everyone here this morning, I can tell you, I know their lives, that for what you've gone through, you've come out stronger. You've come out brighter. Your families have come out stronger. It's such a great testimony to what God is saying in his word, because it's the story of people's lives that change other people's lives. It's wonderful to read in the Bible about stories from some 2,000 years ago, but he said his word is the living word, and how his word comes alive is by stories like we're going to hear today. I know our church is full of them, but you're going to hear some great stories, and thank you for sharing with us, and I appreciate that, and I know people that their lives are going to have a turnaround today are going to thank you as well. Tamara, you faced a storm in your life at a very young age, and you went through a real difficult time. Would you tell us about what it was that you went through?
At the age of 15, about 12 years ago, I lost my mom. She had ALS, and I spent probably 2.5 years when she was diagnosed, kind of in denial. So I didn't accept it. When my grandmother told me, I just looked at her and I was like, okay, are we ready for dinner now? And, people mourned. People came to me about it. I would just be like, oh, she's okay. So after, once my mom passed away, I was kind of just disconnected as well. Everybody was mourning, and I wasn't, because I was angry. So everybody was crying. I was crying, but I was angry. And as I was raised in church, but I didn't understand why God would do this to me. Why would God take my mom? She was faithful. She wasn't perfect, but to me, she was the closest to perfect. And I dealt with many, many years of anger, and I didn't even start that healing process until about a couple years ago. A little bit before, we had just came to this church. It was around summertime, and someone had encouraged me to write a letter to my mom, actually. And I wrote a letter, and it wasn't all so nice either. And then I wrote a letter to God, and maybe it wasn't so nice either. But in that letter, I told God I was really in a bad place. And I said, I was like, God, I know I can't see my mom again, but I'm angry. I feel alone. And I wasn't alone. I had many people that was there for me, but I felt alone. And I didn't understand. And I was just like, I want to feel a mother's embrace. I had a grandmother, but it wasn't the same. And I didn't really believe God would do it. And that's what started the healing process. It was two things. I received God's peace, and I received understanding. And we had came to church. We came to the early service. It was Father's Day. We left a little early so we could see my little brother play the drums. We had never seen him play the drums. It just so happens that that Sunday, a lady and a couple that knew me when I was little was there. And he preached, and I was leaving. My grandma said, well, you don't see them often. They actually live in Georgia. And she's like, go give her a hug. I was like, oh, I don't want to go over and give her a hug. I gave her a hug, and I was like, why did I give this woman a hug? She gave me a hug, and I was like, okay. And I went to go, release her, but she just held me for a longer time. And then that's when I felt it. And I couldn't actually believe that God made me feel, I know she wasn't my mother, but God actually made me feel the embrace of my mother. And I felt such a peace over me. It was so weird. And then God started doing some other things. I knew it was the Holy Spirit inside of her because she hadn't seen me since I was a little girl, and she started speaking. I even heard her while I was crying, telling my grandmother that she has a silent cry. And this is when I had my own apartment. And I had all the teenagers, and I would wait till they fall asleep, and I would just cry. And she said she has a silent cry, and when no one else is listening, she just cries herself to sleep. And that started everything, and I really felt such a peace when I walked away. But I still didn't understand, because I still felt like God had done this to me, and I still didn't understand why. I wasn't sure what he was trying to do. And 3 months later, we had a DOORD conference, and Wendy Treat was there. And I'm not sure which day, but she said, we live in a cursed world. And she said that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But God brings life. And that's when I knew God wasn't doing this to me. He didn't do this to my mother. But what he did was that he was there with us every step of the way. And he gave me my sanity. He kept me through this. There's so many people that give up. But he was there with me, and he kept me here. And that's why I'm standing. It's because he used my darkness to allow me to shine. So.
As we all reach for tissues. Tamara, I love you. And I know that you've gone through hard times. And I thank you for sharing the part about being angry with God, because that's just real. That's where life gets real sometimes, when you just don't understand. And you get angry at God. But then I love how you've shared that God brought you around gently. He brought you around. Aren't you glad God doesn't get angry back? My goodness. You know, the scripture I'm hearing in my heart this morning is that God is slow to get angry, but quick to pour unfailing love on us. And God has also shown you a lot of faithfulness through all this. Can you just share one or a couple of the ways or some way that God has shown you his faithfulness? Like he just shows up in ways that you weren't expecting him to show up.
Yes. Well, when my mom got sick, she was young. She was about 37. So unfortunately, she didn't have life insurance. And it was hard to get life insurance once we found out she was sick. So when she passed away, family members, church members, they came together and they helped. So when you don't have life insurance, you pay for what you can pay for. You pay for what's needed. And what she didn't have was a headstone. And to me, it was a big deal because she was buried next to my grandfather, and he had something there, but every time we went there, we just had to go to my grandfather. And it's something simple, but, you know, it's a big deal to me. And so just recently, I had wrote a post, and I said, oh, I'm 27. I'm old enough. I should be able to afford to get something for my mom, something small. And so I wrote a post on Facebook asking if anyone knew of a place that could make payments or could get a good deal for a headstone. And I actually had a couple people here that even came up to me about it. I kind of forgot a little bit, but over the summer, someone from my old church, actually an associate pastor from my old church, asked me to meet him. And he's like a brother to me, so I was like, what do you want? Like, why do you want to meet me? And he's like, just come to B-Dubs. I was like, is it a surprise? He was like, yeah, it's a surprise. I was like, well, does the person like me? And he's like, just come. So I came, and I saw the guy, and I didn't really know him like that. So the first thing I thought was one of those pyramid businesses, and I was like, oh, gosh. And, And it actually, he just started talking to me. He was asking me about my mom. He was asking me where she was buried, which was weird. And then he said he used to give money to like missionaries and different churches around the world until his wife got sick. She passed away. Actually, she passed away the day before my mom's birthday. And so he had, stopped giving, to take care of those finances. And he said he wanted to start back up. He said, and he wanted to do it a little differently. And he said, I saw a post on your Facebook a while back about your mom. He said, in memory of my wife and in memory of your mom, I want to pay for a headstone 100% for you. So, yeah. All I could do was say thank you, if you could even understand, with all the tears. And we were kind of nervous that it wouldn't come in time, but actually just a couple weeks before my mom's birthday, on Monday actually, we saw the headstone, and so all of our family was able to go down there on Sunday and release balloons and spend time together. And as much as it meant to me, I didn't even realize how much it meant so much to all of my family members that they could come and be able to visit somewhere where they knew she was right there. So.
Thanks for sharing that, Tamara. Tamara attends church here with her lovely granny, Miss Laura, and her brother Deshaun and her sister Lauren. And it's just been a delight to have you guys part of our church family here. What a blessing. Mr. Doug Lamp. Mr. Doug Lamp, you have an interesting story to share as well.
I do, I guess. First of all, I want to thank you all for having me up here, because it's a few years ago, Heather Canby had me do it with her, and all we did was cry. It was really emotional. I've battled drug addiction for 35 years. It's been horrible on me, my family, and it's taken away some of our family members, And May 6th of 14, my family had a intervention, and they told me that they could no longer watch me destroy myself, and if I wasn't willing to get some help, that they didn't want nothing to do with me. Nothing financial, because we have some, holdings in the family, and nothing. They just wasn't going to watch it anymore, and that was I've always been a schemer, you know what I mean? And I could scam anybody and everything else. And so my sister had 4 rehabs written down. And one of them said Christian base. And I said, well, I'll get me some brownies here, you know what I mean? Because Shannon goes to church every week. So I picked a Christian base rehab. Little did I know it was the best decision I ever made in my life, ever. 2 days, they knew they had to do it quick because I'd have found another way out. And 48 hours later, I'm in Pikeville, Tennessee, in this old building up there on the hill. And I met a man that changed my life. I walked through the doors, and this giant, my buddy Daniel knows, named Kevin Shelton, 6'4", 260. He said, welcome to our master's camp. And I was like, I looked up at him, I was like, you know, he's a pretty big guy. And he said something that changed my life. He said, we'll get through this. And I've been to rehabs before. I went in the Army at 28 to get off of it, never worked. And I never heard we, you know what I mean? And I'm sitting there and I'm still all messed up, you know, because it's only been 3 days since I had used. And he was going away to a wedding, and he said, why don't you get in the Bible, and when I get back, we'll get busy. And I'm like, well, I've never read the Bible ever, never wanted to. And I said, where did I start? He said, chapter 1 will work. So that's where I started, you know. And 3 days went by pretty quick, and Monday morning I'm in his office, and I'm like, you know, Kevin, I read, and I'd heard that story, but I thought it was made up, you know, to Adam and Eve and stuff like that, because I literally never read the Bible. It's no joke. So we started talking. I said, but Kevin, you know, I did this, and Kevin, I did that. You know, I treated women horrible. I stole. I'm a thief. I'm a drug addict. I'm a gambler. I stole money. You know, he said, I did that. And I know he wasn't just saying it to make me feel better. I knew it was sincere. And so I'm going to say that was May 11th or something like that. Boy, I started reading the Bible, and that weekend I made up a decision I was going to listen because I knew it all. You couldn't tell me nothing, nobody. My father, Charlie used to tell me God loves you. I'd be like, shut up, you know, you don't know nothing. I hated Charlie, but I love him now. But that's not my brother-in-law, that's my brother, you know what I mean? But we started going to church, and when you go to church and the preacher's named Jesse Jewell, you know what I mean? Stuff just doesn't, it happens for a reason, you know what I mean? And on May 20th, I'm riding back in a van with 14 other young boys. I was next to the oldest person there, and they're singing every song on the radio. And I'm like, how y'all know them songs already? He said, that's what we listened to day and night because it was gospel songs, you know what I mean? And I was trying to pick up a couple words, but so Kevin told me all I had to do was get on my knees one time and ask the Lord for forgiveness. And I was like, man, I don't know. There's a lot that I need forgiven for, you know what I mean? I've done it all. I thought the commandments were backwards, you know what I mean? I thought it was thou shalt, and it was just horrible. But that night, I remember like it was yesterday, May 20th, 10:25, I asked my roommate, I said, Don Eckert from Baltimore, I said, you get on your knees with me, boy? I said, I'm that tired. I can't deal with this no more. I just can't. I'm going to turn it over to God. And we got down on our knees, and we was there for a while. And we cried, and we laughed, and we cried, and we laughed. And I'm not going to say I had that aha moment that some people say they have, but I know one thing. When I woke up the next morning, my life started getting a little better. I could feel, let me back up. I had to fill out some papers to go to this camp, and on the last paper it said, what are you looking for? And I put peace. I put one word, peace. Because I seen my sister and my brother Charlie in the worst of times never got down too far. And in the best of times never got too high, you know what I mean? And they always had that peace about them, and I didn't know where they got it from. But anyhow, so that's what I asked for. And so I went down into, I'm all happy, and I would go down to Kevin's office and I'd knock on the door, and I'm like, Kevin, I got that done last night. He said, you did? He said, how was it? I said, I didn't have an aha moment. I said, but things are better. He goes, did you ask for forgiveness for things you thought about? I'm like, no. He goes, well, get that tonight and things will get better. And I'm like, okay. So camp was awesome. 90 days of just an hour in the Bible every morning in silence. And that's more than I did my whole life. the first day. And so the 90 days went by fast. And I remember Shannon and Charlie coming to pick me up. And sorry. I started talking about the night before I went to CR, and they did this a version of Samson and Delilah, which I'd never heard. They put a little zing to it, you know, said how Delilah was that kind of girl on the trashy side or something. Anyhow, it hit me. It hit me like nothing ever before. And I started talking about it to my sister. And little did I know, she was texting my niece saying, I got my brother back. Thank you. And it meant I didn't know what was going on, but I knew she was doing something, you know what I mean? And they sit there and listen to me run my mouth the whole way home. And because it was, I was finally figuring out where they got it from. You know what I mean? Little by little. I hadn't gotten it all, but I figured out, you know, when you turn things over, you don't have to sit there and eat on them all the time, you know what I mean, and chew on them all the time. And so I come home, and I had come home a lot of times, as I told you, from rehabs and stuff, and my father had always just forgotten about me stealing, forgotten about me lying, and forgotten about me everything. And my sister told me I didn't have a job. Man, and we both cried together that day. And that's the first time I'd ever been told no. For first, I'm like, what are you thinking? You know what I mean? You forget who I am. But then, you know, I went home and I thought about it, and I went, you know, it's just part of the process, you know. And Kevin told me something before I left that I didn't understand until this. He said, God's going to put you in an awkward situation. And the awkward situation for me was cooking chickens at Costco. That was my job I got. A, was the first time I ever worked in my life because I sold cars my whole life. And B, somebody would come around the corner and I'd duck behind a pole. You know, I didn't want nobody to see me, but then I figured it out. That's where I was supposed to be. You know what I mean? Stuffing them chickens on them poles, you know what I mean? And I tell you, I ain't never worked so hard for $11 an hour before, but I did it, you know what I mean? And I did it, and actually they tried to move me up front, and I said, no, this is where I'm supposed to be at. And I kept that job. And you know, lo and behold, my sister saw what I was doing, and I guess she saw something. She hired me back at the car lot, and you know, God's been so good to me. I get to, you know, I know I'm running on, and we got other ones to go, but I want to say, you know, I get to come here and go to church, and with my whole family, my Aunt Jeannie sitting there, my cousin, you know, and that's where I'm supposed to be at. You know what I mean? My whole family's here. And we get to praise and worship together. And, you know, I've gotten about 2 years clean before. And luckily, last Monday, I celebrated 3.5 years clean. And I'm a better brother, I think. I'm a better father. And, you know, I usually get a little antsy around the 2-year period. I get a little, and I told them back at the stage, and I went to see a girls' basketball game, and I went to see the coach because I don't like girls' basketball. It's too slow, but I'm a basketball junkie. Well, I met a couple girls, and both of them are here today, and they've been coming with me, and it's Amelia and Dee Dee, and they're sitting back there. And they're just pretty special to me. You know what I mean? We call each other up, see how each other are doing. And last week, we went to Fellowship of Christian Athletes together. It was my first time. And they called us up on stage to pray. And we're up there hugging and loving and, you know, just bawling and carrying on. And that's what God's done for me. You know, they knew that a 2-year period I've never gotten over, that I was a little antsy. And now I got the pleasure of coaching these girls in basketball. And you know, my whole life, Pastor Beth said, boy, them some orange shoes. Well, I bleed orange and black. I'm a diehard dog. And you know, I wouldn't have none of this without God. And, you know, again, I want to thank you guys for having me up here. And you know, each and everybody here today has a little piece of my sobriety. And I made sure I promised Pastor Beth I'd say something. You know, you can go to rehab. And that's what it takes to get clean. Church is a big But if you get the chance, go to a Christian rehab, because you know what? You get both things you need in life. You get God in rehab. And I know for me, being a 0 for 5 in Army and 4 rehabs, and I went to our master's camp and was lucky enough to pass the phone number on to that gentleman right there. And both of us are sitting up here today. And thank y'all, and God bless.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Doug, I know that story is just penetrating somebody's situation. I get a chance to, talk to some of these people that are going through it, and I'm sure you'd agree with me that everybody going through it knows the right kind of rehab that they need. Sometimes it's self-rehab. Oh, this is what I need. This is and we're always trying to say the same thing to them, but that point of surrender. You tried other kinds of rehabs, but your family really was counting on God to be the final icing on the cake to say, hey, this one's going to stick. Yeah. And that was the difference. That was the difference in your life. And I know just listening to you tell your story that God's got to be involved. There's nothing wrong with getting help.
That's
it's
right.
good to have friends and have professional help, but God's got to be in the center of that, because He's the one that makes it stick. He's the one that makes it last. And then if everything else that we've tried doesn't work, and then we end up falling, God's the one that picks us back up. There'll be a lot of other people that just point their fingers at you.
That's right.
And just say, I don't want anything to do with you. And and I think when your family told you, when they came to you and said, listen, we're not going to watch you do this to yourself anymore, and our only involvement with you is going to be to help you go forward, but this is what you're going to have to do. And it probably that wasn't your idea, it was their idea, but you finally submitted to that and you surrendered to that, and that really ended up making the difference. But at the same time, what I wanted to bring out is that when a family comes together and says, Doug, the only involvement we're going to have with you is to get you fixed. Otherwise, we're not going to be part of you destroying your life. And that basically meant to be in the family and for us to have communication. The only communication that's going to be there is us helping you and you helping yourself. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about. Listen, that's tough love. And a lot of times what the enemy says to the addict or the person that's going through the trouble is, they don't love you no more. They don't care for you no more. And that's what the enemy will say, but that's just tough love. And and let me encourage every family member here today, if you get to that breaking point with your child or with a parent or with a brother or sister, where you have to go to them depths, don't let the enemy drag you into a corner and say, see, I told you, there you are, big believer, you don't love, you don't care, you're just going to let them be stranded. But I'm going to tell you, until somebody gets to that point of full surrender, because you ran out of options. You ruined every option that you had, and now you had to do what they said, because that was the only option you had. And Doug, I'm so glad that you took that option, and that God has turned your life around. And man, you rose from the bottom. You didn't have anywhere else to go. You reached your bottom. And now look at you here today. You're just touching people's lives, and even with your story today and other things that you're doing, man, God is using you in such a powerful way. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Daniel, I'll tell you, this young fellow right here to the right of me, Daniel Kisner, and his lovely wife, Amanda. I love this guy. I said this a few weeks ago in service, but I took notice of this guy when he was just a little fella, and Beth, had been watching him. She just kept saying there's something special about that guy. We got to keep our eyes on him, and any time there was, a time to pray for you when you weren't doing well, I want to tell you what, this family was praying for you, and we were believing in you. But you went through a long, long journey of alcohol addiction, and could you tell us a little bit about, what that was doing to your life, to your family, and how you were able to turn that around?
Yeah, my story is really similar to Doug's over here. From the point I was 15, I dabbled in a little bit of pretty much everything. But basically, long story short, what it came down to is it was destroying my life and my relationship with my wife. My family started. It was pretty easy to not be able to trust me anymore because I would lie about pretty much anything. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop on my own. I told myself several times, I tried to promise everybody that I could stop on my own. And that just was not the case. And, there's times where you need professional help. And as much as I didn't want to admit it, I finally broke down. And I think, and I'll be honest, what happened to actually get me to go to rehab is I got a DUI. And at first, I think I was kind of I felt like I was escaping. I told everybody, okay, I'm ready to go. But I think initially it was to get me away from everybody, what they have to say, kind of just that way I can get away from town and not be seen for a while, and kind of just to get out of it, I guess you would say. But when I went to camp, I went to the same camp as my man Dougie here. My dad talked to him. This is my dad's cousin. And being brought up in a Christian home, and going to church all my life, we instantly thought that was a thing to do. So we called Dougie up, and Dougie let us know about our master's camp in Pikeville, Tennessee. And just basically what Dougie said is exactly what that place is like. That place is just absolutely amazing. When I got there, I was nervous, but I had a lot of family at home and friends at home that had my back every step of the way. I mean, they never left my side. And I knew I had to go there and do the right thing and come home, changed. I just knew I had to do that for them and for me, for my son. I didn't want him to see me like that growing up. And so when I went there, I made a decision that I was going to do everything I could do to better my life. And of course, I was nervous, very nervous. I first got there. Unpacked my bags. All the guys showed me the ropes, took my bags up to my room for me, showed me that they cared about me. And then I went outside. I was sitting outside. They said, these guys are finishing up their projects or their work therapy. You can just go outside and hang out for a little bit until they get done. So I went outside and I just prayed. I didn't know what to do. I was nervous, like a little kid, crying and just shaking just because I was scared. And so I prayed to God. I just said, Lord, if, give me a sign. Tell me I'm going to be okay. And I'm not real good at seeing signs. I don't know if anybody really is good at seeing signs, but I know I'm not. So when I asked that, I didn't know if I was going to see anything, hear anything, feel anything, or whatnot. So I kind of just looked up in the sky because Tennessee is beautiful. So it was just, I just looked up, kind of tried to endure everything. and all of a sudden this fighter jet just went, flew by me. And it was like 10 feet over my head. Well, I say 10 feet, you know. It felt 10 feet over my head. But it was pretty low, and I was like, at first I didn't think anything of it. I was like, wow. A couple minutes later, I was like, wow, you know, is that my sign? You know, Lord, tell me, was that a sign that you're going to take care of me while I'm here? And it was maybe 2 minutes later that the first plane flew by, a second jet flew by. And I knew then I was safe. This is where I was supposed to be. And he took care of me. The place was absolutely wonderful. It was really hard. It was hard to be there, having a 1.5-year-old at home, and a wife, leaving her to take care of what I'm supposed to take care of, my son, my house, my bills, my everything. And that's another time my family really showed up. They took care of my wife and my son, and we were able to keep our house. We were able to keep everything. We didn't lose anything. The only thing we lost was, you know, time together during that 90 days. But one thing I want to make clear is, you know, if you're struggling, just do yourself a favor, do everybody a favor, and get yourself some help, some professional help, because it is definitely the best thing that I have done for me and my family. You know, it saved my marriage. I'm pretty sure that the day I got sent to jail on the DUI, my wife was packing my bags to kick me out of the house. So that was really hard to hear that. But I tell you, most people would have been completely discouraged at the moment. I was sitting in jail thinking, why don't I feel completely humiliated? But I think I just knew it was meant to be. Like, God did that because he did that to save me. I knew he was going to take care of me the whole time. I knew it was the end of my road. I knew it was time, and everything was going to be okay. And
You know, you guys, not every story ends like this.
no, it doesn't.
Family intact, husband and wife still together. Amanda, is there anything you would add to that? What was that like for you, and what kept you strong in that time?
It was really hard. When we first decided that he was going to go to Tennessee, I thought, it's 8 hours away. We've been together for, I don't know, around 10 years. We've never gone 2 weeks without seeing each other or speaking, and how am I going to do this? We just bought a home. I have a child. I have a part-time job, looking for a full-time job. And our family and our church family stepped up to help us and assured us that everything was going to be okay. So we just put all of our trust in him, and I promised him Silas and I would come see him once a month. So that's what we did, along with family and friends. We made a trip once a month to go see him. So it didn't seem so bad.
Yeah, the camp was completely surprised one time. The first time they came to visit, I think there was, 13 people? I felt like a celebrity at the moment. But, yeah, Amanda was a trooper, man. She could have left me a long time ago, and she stuck by my side. She said, we married each other, and she said that she would stick by me through thick and thin, and that's exactly what she did. So if you guys or anybody knows somebody that is going through this struggle, do yourself a favor and be there for that person. I don't think I'd be here today. Well, I know I wouldn't be here today on the stage, but if it wasn't for my family and my wife, my friends, that's why I'm still here. And every single person in here, it plays a role in my sobriety. Each one of you that knows my story is somebody that's going to be like an accountability partner for me, because I can't go anywhere without somebody being there seeing what I'm doing. And
It's good.
and as much as it kind of stinks to say that, because I don't want everybody to watch me all the time. But at least I know that, and I can't try to sneak something or hide something, and that's what I need. So my story's out there to everybody. Share it to whoever you want to share it to. For me.
That's good. And Daniel, I like what you're saying as well as Doug. Your family was there for you, and you're saying be there for them. But the way that your family was there for you is they no longer could let you make the decisions.
Yes.
You had to stop making decisions. You'd gone down this road before. You said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'll be accountable to. This isn't going to happen again. And it would happen over and over again. But just to qualify, being there for somebody, the only way you can really be there is when the line is drawn, that person no longer can make the decisions. Because I love what you said, Doug. Your family just said, we're not going to watch you destroy yourself anymore. And so really getting to the bottom is when you say, I draw the line, and on this side of the line is where the decisions are being made, and on the other side of the line is where I am. So families that have this out, every family's affected by this. The best thing that you could do is to help them see where the line is. Draw the line, articulate that for them, explain it for them, and help them make good decisions. Because as long as they're making decisions, this is a disease that will keep eating away at their lives until it takes their life. And thank God you've got a great family. You got a great church. You came back. You didn't know where you was going to work or anything like that. And I had a conversation with Amanda, knowing that you had great skills. We were just getting into building this facility here, and there isn't a room, not a closet in this building that he hasn't worked on. He is a builder of God's church. Look at what God's done for him. My goodness.
And not to interrupt, but Amanda and I really appreciate the help that you guys have given us throughout the whole entire way.
God is so good, and what the enemy meant for evil, God has turned around and caused it for your good. And when I look at you, I hear it over and over again. Though a righteous man fall even 7 times, he gets back up again. Doug, when a righteous man falls, he gets back up again. And that's what this message is about. It's called I'm Still Standing. Then Psalm 92, it says, the righteous will flourish like a palm tree. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to flourish like a palm tree? Well, a palm tree faces hurricane winds. And after the hurricane winds look like it's bent it completely over, it bounces back up again, stronger than it was before the storm. And that's what God does. What the enemy thought was going to come along and hit you hard like a storm, God caused it to make your roots to go deeper. God caused it to make you stronger. God caused it to make it bigger, better, wiser on the other side. So I thank God this morning for his promises in all of your guys' life, all in your life. The righteous will flourish like a palm tree. And I'm just thankful for the bounce back that each of you represent here on this stage this morning.
It's beautiful.